same thing in everyone's screen, in every breakout group. Otherwise, yeah, everyone will enjoy hearing about Knox Met United Church. So yeah, I'm speaking today about Knox Metropolitan United Church in downtown Regina on Treaty 4 territory. I'm actually speaking to you from the Days Inn in downtown Edmonton, though, on Treaty 6 territory. I'm here driving my mother to and from some medical appointments. So what a world. I've been at Knox Met since 2014. I was brought there to help as a second minister, help work on discerning and embodying the future. For the last few years, we've spoken about that under the title "Being There When the Future Comes," which is a phrase we have thanks to the work of Carol, who's on this call. Her partner Dan has helped with that. I'd say that one thing to begin with, we're a work in progress, not a success story or a model yet to learn from. I hope, though, that maybe some of our process might be informative. Perhaps you've heard of us. I don't mean literally us, but we are one of those churches. Old building, needs a lot of care, expensive to maintain, bigger than the congregation requires. We're growing, but even as we've grown from 100 to 150 on a Sunday morning, we are still in a sanctuary built for 900 people. And we're experiencing growth, but in the midst of a little of a long-term downtrend in attendance, engagement, as well as offerings. This is just a picture of the church. Someone holding a picture of the church when it was destroyed in the 1912 cyclone in Regina that destroyed much of the city. My predecessor, who I worked with for a few years before he retired, he says that he coined this phrase. I'm not sure if he did. Other people say they did, but for a long time, long before I've been there, Knox Met has talked about the phrase, "We are downtown on purpose." You can see this Google map. Our next door neighbor on one side is City Hall. Our next door neighbor on the other side is Victoria Park, which is where the Regina Folk Festival, the Regina Farmers Market, all sorts of wonderful things happen there. Another circumstances, National Indigenous Day celebrations would be happening there this weekend, but that is not the case right now. And this commitment to neighborhood, this decision to seek to be downtown on purpose, is part of what attracted me to the role. About a month into my time, I went out for coffee with Judith Verasuk, Executive Director of Regina Downtown Business Improvement District. And she said this about her vision for the downtown. She hopes that downtown Regina would be everyone's neighborhood. What she means by that is not a lot of people necessarily live downtown. It's one of the more sparsely populated spaces, but it's a space where potentially everyone can have a level of ownership and feeling of connection to. So it's got the questions we've been trying to ask. If Knox Metropolitan is downtown on purpose, and if downtown Regina is everyone's neighborhood, what are things we can, should, and could do that we only can do as a congregation or as a institution because we are downtown that we couldn't do if we were elsewhere? How can we become everyone's church? And what I mean by that is not how can we make sure that everyone in Regina attends the church. I think that is neither our theological leaning nor a realistic prospect. But how can we be a church where everyone in the city feels like there's a sense of ownership, a sense of connection to? Flea market, church flea market. This is not ours. I just Googled a picture of it. I couldn't find a good picture of our flea market. I'm sure you've seen a church flea market full of stuff. Knox Met's got a big one. When I arrived at Knox Met, the Knox Met flea market was everyone's favorite thing. The Prairie Dog magazine, Regina's little independent newspaper, voted us the best religious institution in 2017 on the strength of the chicken salad sandwich and borscht that is served at the lunch at the flea market. When you ask Knox Met folk about the flea market, they say this: everyone in the community comes and everyone in the church is involved. I'm going to be honest with you, neither of those statements are actually true, but it's a powerful narrative. And it is a neat thing. And so something I've been doing is thinking, how is the flea market a metaphor for who we can be? You go to a church flea market, no matter who you are, what drew you in there. Maybe you're looking for a parka, maybe you're looking for some borscht, maybe you're looking for some ski goggles. You might find exactly what you're looking for. You might not. But you're probably going to find something beautiful, something lovely. That's going to enhance your life. It's going to help you in some way. Whether you come to Knox Met for a service, for a baptism, for a wedding, as for a concert, for a rental group, we hope that you're going to find something meaningful. And I've been trying to invite the congregation to think about that rather than the secret being, hey, we're going to get people to come and become lifelong members of the church like you were. But what if we are a flea market in people's lives? Knox Met has always done a couple things. They've always done concerts, the symphony, Baroque ensemble, Regina Philharmonic Chorus. They've always done rentals, 12-step programs, Toastmasters, Weight Watchers. They've always been involved in social justice. They've been the home of Regina Anti-Poverty Ministry, the Regina Transit Coalition, Peace Quest Regina, and so many other spots. And they've always been an area of community gatherings, election forums, things like that. These are things that they've done for years. But it's always been done off the side of someone's desk. The rental program brings in 20% of the revenue, which is a great narrative. But when we actually look at the numbers, every single cent of that is actually eaten up by staff salary that's required to do it. So we bring in $60,000 a year. We probably pay $75,000 a year to be a rental venue. And it's a hard narrative to break. So here's what we've been trying that's a little bit different but related. So I've got my notes here around. Oh yeah, and the other thing is this rental program, not necessarily aligned with the overall goals of the church. So we've been trying some experiments in intentionality and intentionally making the church a place that anyone could connect to. Up Regina was a open event with Zen Buddhist teacher Michael Stone. It was run in partnership with the local community association, some artists. The SWG stands for the Saskatchewan Writers Guild. With them, we've been running something called the Unsettling Ideas Book Club. In the first year, we took 10 books by 10 Indigenous authors, each one connected to one of the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So over that year, Katarina Vermette, Lee Miracle, Joshua Whitehead, and other Indigenous authors presented from the church. And it was intentionally geared, not as a church event, but an event for people interested in learning about reconciliation. We bought a cloth labyrinth. We've often rented our space to teachers. ATM stands for Awareness Through Motion, or Feldenkrais, which is a embodied spiritual practice. And instead of just renting it to an instructor, we went out and found an instructor. We thought this could be of interest to the community. We went out and found an instructor. We managed registration. We did all the scheduling and the advertisement. Rather than them just renting our space, it became us putting on a community program. And Quest for Respect was similar. This was a 3-week program with a local Indigenous elder named Lorna Standing Ready, who's also a minister in the United Church. We did it on Thursday evenings in November. On the first one, we set up, I optimistically set up 20 chairs based on the Facebook event in the lounge. And about 15 minutes before, we had to move into the sanctuary because those 20 chairs were way full, and we had about 50 people come over. And then over the 3 nights, we had about 75 distinct individuals, 50 each night. And they were the 3 coldest weeks in November in that year. And only about 10 people were from the church. And we specifically geared that as the church offering something for the community. We've also been trying to include groups that we've maybe not always done well to work with. Queen City Pride, the Regina Folk Festival. Knox Met's been a classical music venue, but our relationship with non-classical music's not always been great. And through just participating in local events, we've worked with the Voices for Accountability and for police accountability and violence groups looking at those situations. If you remember, folks near Regina or who have seen this on the news, in summer of 2016, there was an occupation camp out front of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs offices. Those folks were meeting and working with out of the church. And then the group that occupied the lawn of the legislature from February through September of 2018 was working in and out of the church as well. And then one thing led to another. In February of 2018 was a really hard time for many communities, particularly Indigenous communities in Saskatchewan. It was within 2 weeks of each other that first, the killer of Colton Boushie and then the killer of Tina Fontaine were both acquitted of all charges. we happen to be kitty corner to Court of Queen's Bench. So because of our relationship with the Writers Guild and with the Police Accountability Group, when these rallies and vigils were happening, they reached out to the church about using our space to hold those, which was a remarkably humbling thing for us to be able to open that space up and see so many people gather to share grief and pain. And neither would have happened had those other events and those other connections not begun. Our quest now is thinking about how do all these little things come together. How do we bring some of these little experiments into some sort of cohesive, manageable, sustainable method? Because trying to do all these things on the edges is neither sustainable human resources wise, it's exhausting, and it's also neither financially sustainable. So what's the sort of ownership model, partnership model for our building, community partnerships, programming, staffing, et cetera, to make this all work? And how am I doing for time, Carla? Am I okay here?
You're okay.
Great.
And there's going to be lots of time for Q&A as well.
Awesome. Perfect. So things that we're trying to figure out right now, we're doing some designing work, looking at the building with some architectural groups. We've worked with the Edge to do some table talks within the congregation. We've been preaching on these ideas, inviting community consultation, and doing some feasibility studies with local consultants. And here's some hard things. Here's what we're really challenged with. Do we have an atmosphere of trust and safety within the congregation and its leadership in order to make big changes? We're not sure that we do, and we're trying to figure out how we can make that. Is financial security, I say in quotation marks, stifling? We've got some money in the bank, which means that there's some reluctance in making bold changes. Can we move beyond turf marking? So many of these things have to do with the way the building is used. And there's a group that's been managing that for 30 years, and they've been managing it a particular way. And some of these things are hard. And is past success limiting? Just because we've run 30 concerts that we're really proud of, that's not a sustainable model in the future, but it can be stifling and limiting for our imagination in the future. Things that are sparking for us right now, we're right now in conversation with the city of Regina about how our church can be involved in revitalizing a community association for the downtown. We're talking, and part of this has been helped with Embracing the Spirit grant through the Edge, looking with local performing arts groups about a shared platform. And that local performing arts group has been inspired by Cynthia's work, so I'm not going to say too much about that. We've been talking with the city about how us and other churches could make use of a new model that the city of Regina is looking at for partnerships. And another big thing is we've become an affirming ministry. I just want to say one last thing really quick. In 2014, I went to Cleveland to do a course. This is the Amistad Chapel in the head offices of the United Church for Christ in the US, United Church of Christ in the US. It's called the Amistad. It's built on the dimensions of the Amistad slave ship. Because recognizing that the United Church of Christ's predecessor denominations have their history steeped in the transatlantic slave trade. They've made this big architectural feature in their offices that reminds them of the legacy of the slave trade and how that legacy informs their future. Knox Metropolitan United Church was the local support for the Regina Indian Industrial School. Something that Dawn, who I know is on this room as well, has been instrumental in working towards. There's some amazing work being done at the site of that school. The school building's no longer there, but there's a cemetery to memorialize the cemetery. But the reality is no one strolls past Pinkey Road. It's on the edge of the community. You can go there. There's some amazing work being done to create a memorial there, but no one's going to accidentally walk by it. Everyone walks downtown. I don't mean everyone, but thousands and thousands of people every day walk downtown. So one of my questions is, what is our architectural feature, piece of art, renaming project that brings the history of Regina's involvement with the Indian Industrial School system to our forefront so that we remember it's everyone's history and everyone's work for the future? That's a little bit about Knox Met, and as we're trying to figure out what it means to be there when the future comes.